All right, Tori, thank you. Well, a new report from Controller Tom DiNapoli says that New York is in good financial shape, but relies too much on borrowing and other temporary revenue sources. And joining us now, our political analyst, New York Post state editor, Fred Dicker from Albany. And Fred, how about it? I know that Tom DiNapoli is a little concerned that while we look good on paper, there's a lot of things built into that might not be around for long.
Well, that's absolutely true. Look, the state comptroller, by law, is supposed to take a look at the budget, and this is a traditional thing. Every year, the state comptroller's office reviews the budget that was passed on March 31, gives a public statement as to its pluses and minuses. When you read into this report from the state comptroller, as you suggest, Liz, you do see there are problems, but he also points out there were some good things. Keep in mind that DiNapoli, a Democrat like the governor, and Democrat like Speaker Silver, he doesn't want to be too critical of them, presumably. He's up for a re-election himself this year, so he's part of the situation here. So I think he wants to make it sound as positive as possible, and there are positives in it. I mean, the line was held on spending, arguably. It's just about 2%, although the comptroller notes that there's a lot of debt that's in it and reliance on one-shot or limited revenues that come in just for a short period of time. He also noted that it was passed on time, and there's a plus there. It's a mixed picture in his report, and I think that's an accurate description of his budget.
You know, I got to wondering as I was reading about this, one of the things that happens, and there's nothing you can either predict or control, are, say, natural disasters or weather-related catastrophes or something like that. And we've had our share here in New York. How does that factor into these budgets? I mean, doesn't that throw it all up in the air, up for grabs when something like that happens? Or are there, is it calculated in?
Well, it's calculated in to some degree. For instance, in this budget, there's almost $200 million put into what's called a rainy day fund, and that's for just the kinds of things you're talking about. Also, as we saw with Tropical Storm or Hurricane Sandy, the federal government can come in with billions of dollars in unexpected aid when there's a true natural disaster. But generally, they don't put a whole lot of money into the budget anticipating a natural disaster, if only because they like to spend it for programs that are going to get them reelected. I would encourage people, if they do have the interest, to go to the state comptroller's website and take a look at the report. It's available. It can be read, and it's not all that difficult to penetrate.
Would you consider this a conservative election year budget?
I think it's more conservative or moderate than we've seen at times. Usually what we've seen from governors, Republican and Democrat, Liz, is a lot of big spending during an election year. Now, that said, there's very little inflation out there. Costs are not going up the way they have in previous years. And many local governments and school districts are being crushed by the lack of availability of more state aid. And while there is some additional state aid for school districts and others, it's not nearly enough to deal with the problems many of them say they have. So on balance, I give the governor and the legislature credit for not spending, like drunken soldiers as they've done in the past. That said, they really are not under enormous pressure because revenues have been reasonably good and costs have not been going up all that much.
All right. Well, thank you for your insight. And Fred, of course, is on the radio as well, live from the state capitol. It's weekday mornings from 10 to 11 on Talk 1300 AM. You might want to check that out.